So, if you've been around Downey for long enough now, or if you just happen to come to the Enneagram workshop and remember that I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, then you know that this morning's sermon title is a little bit of a self-limiting stretch for me. I've never really been one to get worked up about keeping up with the Joneses and feeling like we're supposed to have the biggest house or the fastest car or any of that stuff. It's never really interested me. But since the time I was probably 5 years old, if there was something that had lights on it and blinked and flashed and made noise, I had to have it. As an adult, that's meant I will admit, a few gadgets that I probably don't need, but that I thought would make life easier and better. And I can't help but go through life imagining what could make it awesomer. It's not a word, but still. Not always with things, but with ideas. What is it that a new program or ministry that our church can do that can take it to the next level, that can help us do something bigger and better? So I have a hard time leaving things simple. Maybe some of you feel that way too. Maybe some of you just think I'm crazy, but truth is, whether you're like me or not, or whether you're 7 on the Enneagram or not, for most of us, especially in this particular country, the idea of a simple life is kind of a foreign concept. It's almost impossible to find rest in the quiet comfort of a simple life. Because really, a simple life is not what the world tells us we need. A simple life is not what the culture around us trains us to want. In fact, the only time in my memory, at least, that our culture was really talking about the idea of the simple life was about 20 years ago when Paris Hilton was on the reality TV show. I tried to find a poster of it in case you didn't know what I was talking about, but I really couldn't find one that I wanted to show in church. But other than that, really, the idea of a simple life just isn't something that we talk about a whole lot. It's not part of our culture. I've heard of being larger than life. I've heard of being the life of the party. Maybe you grew up loving to watch the movie It's a Wonderful Life, or hearing about the best things in life. Turns out on TV commercials never actually are free. See TV commercials all the time helping us think about what is the good life? What is the life that we deserve? TV shows and movies all over the board about the secret life of this or that, a hidden life, even the real life, whatever that means. All the gossip revolves around how's your dating life? Or how's your sex life? Are you enjoying family life? When you're a kid and you go off to college, adults seem to ask you every 30 minutes, what are you going to do with your life? When you're older at the water cooler, maybe people will ask, what's happening in your professional life these days? Or as you near 65, what are you planning to do with retirement life? Seldom a day goes by that we're not encouraged to imagine life in some kind of way. But I just don't remember the last time anyone asked me, are you living a simple life? What Confucius said thousands of years ago is no less true today, in fact, probably more true, that life at its core, life really is simple. and yet we insist on making it so darn complicated. All those other kinds of life that we are encouraged to think about, that we ask each other about all the time, all those other kinds of life matter, sure. They're an important part of who we are. Those things make a big difference in our life. They're how we've learned to survive and get through life. They're a huge part of who we are. But even all of those parts of life, as important as they may be, not a single one of them, not one of them, is the wholeness of our life. All those other pieces of our life, they're like layers of an onion that we pile on top of who we really are. We add all this other stuff, and some of it matters and some of it doesn't. But at its core, on the inside of who we are, God has given us life. God has given us a life that's intended to be full of love and hope. And so this Lenten season, as we think about the simple life, it might be true that 6 weeks from now, on Easter Sunday, I will look back and be really glad that we are done talking about the simple life. But even if that's true, this Lenten season is an invitation, and it's a journey to peel back the layers of the onion of our life. Maybe some need to be pulled away. Maybe some need to be set aside. Maybe some need to be looked at more carefully. But it's an invitation to peel them back and look on the inside of what kind of life we have been called to live. Because underneath all that other stuff that we pile on is the essence of who God made us to be. It's what Jesus was talking about when Jesus said that I have come that you might have life and have it abundantly. I have come that you might have life and have it abundantly. When we think about Jesus and life, most of the time, the only verse that people point to is about eternal life, about something that is not this life that we're living. It's about something that happens to us long after we're gone. But don't forget that Jesus says, I have come that you may have life. Right here and right now, there is more. There is more than what our life is. But we don't discover that by piling on another layer and another layer and another layer. So in this season of Lent, we think about what is the simple life. What is it simply that makes us who we are? What is it simply that God has made us to be and to become and to live and to do in this season? Let's peel back the layers. In some ways, I think it's kind of a shame that we Protestants, many Protestants at least, kind of push aside the idea of Lent. A lot of different things people say about that. Oh, it's too Catholic. Or maybe, Lent is just a time for people to show off how pious they are, that they're not eating fish on Fridays or whatever it is. They're just showing off. For others, it might be kind of rejection of moral purity, that God somehow loves us more if we do these things, if we don't eat chocolate or don't drink wine for 40 days, that somehow we're better in the eyes of God than we were before. And if any of those are the reasons why people don't think about Lent a whole lot, I will reject all of those things. But my theory is that underneath the layers of that onion, that really, the real reason that most of us don't make a whole big deal out of Lent is because if it is about peeling back the layers of that onion, if it really is about looking deep down inside ourselves, if that's what Lent is about, I wonder if there's a few of us that are just afraid to find out what is underneath all that other stuff. It's a lot easier to say, let's just not do that. Let's not worry about giving something up. Let's just go on life as it always was anyway. I love all those people who sell their possessions and go to start a health clinic in Africa or wherever it is. I have so much admiration for that. There are people on this planet right now living in 2020 who have given up everything that they have to go help somebody else. There's nothing bad about giving up something. But what is it that we're called to give up? Maybe it's that. But maybe it's one of those layers of the onion of our life that keeps us from really looking in. It keeps us from examining who we could be if we're not afraid to find out. In my house on the Tuesday before Lent starts, Marilyn always insists that we make pancakes. I don't know if anybody else does that. It's actually a really old custom going back to the medieval ages on a day called Shrove Tuesday. And the whole town would come out together and they would bring all the flour and the butter and the eggs from their pantry and get rid of it. They put it in a pot, mix it up, and make pancakes out of the very last of the stuff in the cupboard so that they could go through Lent and not be tempted to make cupcakes or whatever they made back then and say, let me just kind of strip away all this other stuff. Now, some people still observe Shrove Tuesday. Most people who do call it Mardi Gras, and it seems to be a lot more popular. Not going to go into unpacking that. And I'll tell you that when we made pancakes, it wasn't because we were using up the last of our flour and butter and eggs and that we aren't going to have those things in Lent. But I love this idea. What is the spiritual equivalent of getting rid of the things that we don't need? What is it that's opening up the inside of who we are and saying, I don't really need that. I don't really need to hide behind this fear of who I am. I don't really need to stay so busy and afraid of a few quiet moments that I never take the time to do it. Stripping away the things that we don't need to see who we are. For a lot of people, that is talking about money, and that is talking about possessions, and that is talking about the latest and greatest gadget. But that's not all it is. It really isn't. What is it that God has made us to be? As we think about the simple life, don't feel like you have to go home from here and throw away your flour and your butter and your eggs. But what is it that you've been called to give up? What is it that piece of your life that holds you back from really stepping into who God made you to be? What is that stumbling block? Is it an idea or belief that you have? Is it a possession that you need to get rid of? Is it a relationship that's not healthy? Is it forgiveness that is being held back, that just kind of slowly eats away at you and you don't even realize it? What is it we need to give up? More than chocolate, more than wine, but rather, what is it that we have been called to give up for the sake of the gospel? What is it that we have been called to give up to faithfully follow into the invitation? Set down your nets and come follow me. Be my disciples. Be part of what I'm doing. This holy season of Lent, this idea of the simple life, it's not about being plain and ordinary and boring. It's none of those things. It's about reclaiming the notion that God has already made you extraordinary, and all those other things that we cover up our life with. When we peel those back, we get to see on the inside what God already sees. God already sees through that other stuff that we hold on to, that we think makes us safe, that we think makes us secure. God sees who we are deep down and says, you are beautifully, wonderfully, fearfully made in my image. It's not ordinary. It's extraordinary. Our task this Lent is to remember who we are. Who is it that God has made you to be? What is it that you need to set aside to find, to rediscover that person? I can't think about that question without reflecting on my 2-year-old nephew's birthday party. We were in Tennessee until about midnight last night, so I apologize if I feel a little tired this morning. But we went to my 2-year-old's birthday party, 2-year-old nephew's birthday party in Jackson, Tennessee, and the theme for the party was The Lion King, which basically meant that for 4 hours while we were there in Tennessee, that Hakuna Matata was playing on repeat the whole time we were there. And I was thinking about this idea of Lent. When Jesus goes out into the wilderness, it's kind of like when Simba wanders off into the desert and the warthog and the meerkat try to tell him, all you need to do is sing this song. No worries. Don't worry. Hakuna Matata, life will be okay. And somewhere along that journey, he has to discover that just isn't true. That life's full of all kinds of worries, and you can't just ignore them. And in the most spiritual part of the movie, when he sees the ghost of his father, and the great voice of Darth Vader thunders through the clouds there, he says, you have forgotten who you are. Remember who you are. That is what happens to Jesus in the desert. Remember who you are. You are my son. He hears at his baptism. What is it that we need to remember in this Lenten season? What is it that God speaks to us and says, remember who you are. Don't forget under all those other layers that we pile on, but look inward to the simplicity of life and just remember who you are. That is enough. Remember who you are. So even if reflecting on this simple life may be a challenge, it's also an opportunity. A chance for each one of us to look within and not rely on our own strength, but to discover that, as one of my mentors says, that all spirituality is really an act of letting go. I don't know if I believe that, but I intend to find out this Lent. And I think together, if we can let